Hello, I'm Brian Martin, and I'm happy to be with you today. Today is today is January 5th, 2020. And the gospel lesson for today hey Josh, the gospel lesson for today is from John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. Today is the second Sunday after Christmas, and this is a season where we continue to remember the wonderful manifestation of Jesus Christ into our world. It's a fabulous lesson today. When I was in seminary, I took biblical Greek, and one of the passages that I translated and memorized from the Greek was John chapter 1. And so this is a really beautiful memory for me. I want to have you think about memories today and how we remember things, because it's John's memory about Jesus, and he attributes to him some wonderful and some lofty language. So let's see if I can open up the Bible from here's the Bible, right? Don't tell anybody we're using this. John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and then the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood, or of the will of the flesh, or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified to him and cried out, "This is he of whom I said, 'He who comes after me ranks ahead of me, because he was before me.'" From his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. The law was indeed given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known. That's the preamble and the beginning of the Gospel of John. And isn't it beautiful? We could take a lot of time to go into the metaphors and the language and the dualism and the other aspects of this passage. But I want to talk with you today about how John chose to remember Jesus. And it's with this beautiful language that comes out of him that reveals the tremendous impact that Jesus had for the writer of this gospel. John was intrigued by Jesus, so much so that he had to set down in writing what Jesus meant to him and to the world. Some might think that this is a theology that's for all of Christianity. And in ways it is, I'm sure. But what's really noteworthy to me is how John chooses to remember Jesus. I want to talk about legacy for a few moments, if I may. I'll be 66 years old this year. Imagine that. So I can remember events that happened 50 years ago. Well, isn't that crazy? So the things that are written here were written after Jesus' death, 50 years, 60 years afterwards. And John has this wonderful memory, this memory of what it was like and what he experienced and what he felt. And he chooses to document it in this particular form. So at the age of 66, sometimes people start thinking about their legacy. And what may help is because I have the opportunity to officiate a lot of funerals. That's a distinction that might be uncomfortable for some people, but it's a tremendous honor and a pleasure for me to do that. Tomorrow, I have a funeral, and I sat with the family yesterday as they were thinking about their loved one. And I have a little a process that I take people through when I meet with them. And the first thing that I do after giving them the general idea about what our meeting is going to be like for that day is I take them on a journey. And I take them on an intergenerational journey where we go back at least 2 generations. We talk about who the deceased person's parents were, what they did for a living, what it was like to live in that particular home when they were growing up, what they felt, what was comfortable to them, what was uncomfortable to them about that life. And just to get a picture of what's going on. And I've been doing this now for years and years and years. I did it with your dad, Amanda. It was a beautiful time to sit down with a family and talk, even under very, very difficult experiences. And when you hear the wonderful stories about where people came from and how they developed their way of being in the world and the things that they experienced, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful legacies are set out. So in the story that I heard yesterday about a beautiful person who passed away, I heard a really great story. The story was when the daughter was in elementary school, the daughter of the deceased person. And she was riding her bike to school, and her brother and her sisters rode on ahead and left her behind. And but she got about halfway to school and started crying because she was left behind. And so she went home and she told her mother, the mother, the one who had passed away. And the mother said, "Oh, get back on your bike and go to school." So she got her back on her bike, and mother got in the car and followed her, and the little girl cried. She said, "All the way to school." And now, all these years later, she remembers growing up in that home and her beautiful mother's guidance that helped her. And it wasn't always pleasant, but it was a beautiful memory and a legacy that was left behind. So the question I'm going to ask you today is this: what shall be your legacy? how shall you be remembered? John remembered Jesus as the Word that became flesh, light that shines in the darkness, the Word of God among us. What a beautiful memory he had. And what about you? What will your little girl say about you? And what will your family say about you? I think it's a really profound and a beautiful exercise for you to engage in. I think about this because I'm 66 years old. You may not have time or necessity to do that, but I think it's a great exercise for you. In one of my books, I think it's the ebook, Eternity is the E in Love, I tell a little story. And in that story, it's a story about a person who is lying on a gurney in a hospital. And they wake up and they look over and they see a bag of blood hanging there. But they notice that it's not dripping and that it is not even connected to them. And they look around and there's nobody in the room. And just then, in my story, a woman walks through the door. And the person who's laying on the gurney has this knowing about who this person is, but they can't place them. And the person says to them, "You were in a terrible accident, but you will not die. Instead, you've been given the gift of life. You are an amazing miracle of astronomical proportions. You've been given the gift of life. Use it wisely." Just then, their eyes meet in an intense way, and she walks out of the room. So the question that I ask is, how will you live your gift of life? And if you're a person whose days are numbered, nobody knows when they're going to die, you have a sense of urgency about living the best life that you can. But why not do that now? Why not think about your descendants, the ones who will come after you, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren? Sometimes I look at family photos, and when I look on the photos, I see my granddaughters, and I realize that what is inside of them already is the generations. And I think, oh, wow, what a tremendous opportunity we have to build a legacy. And now I'm going to conclude by I'm going to tell you how to build the most beautiful and wonderful legacy for your family. And I'm going to suggest that the model is Jesus. And the reason that I'm going to suggest the model is Jesus is because I believe that there are very, very few people who have ever lived, who've lived a life of love as completely and as fully as Jesus did. See, that's my memory of Jesus, not John's memory, it's my memory. When I read about Jesus, I read about one who knew what his gift was. And every single day of his life, he used his gift to its fullest extent. And I will tell you what his gift was. And I'm also going to tell you that that gift is resident in you. Jesus had the gift of loving people. He loved them by many different ways, by preaching, by teaching, by touching, by healing. But it was all the same gift, the gift of love. That's why John was so moved to write about him in such elegant and demonstrative words. He had the gift of love. And he loved me, John said. I know that you also have the gift of love inside of you. And as often as you use it in your words of encouragement, the way that you help people, if you're a teacher, if you're a pharmacist, if you're a preacher, it doesn't make any difference what you are. It's the same gift of love. And when you love people every single day, you're carving out that niche of your legacy, that beautiful way that you will be remembered. You see, your life is more than just for today. A lot of people think that we should just live life for the day. But the real truth is that your life is for today and tomorrow and for the next generation and for the following generation. All of our ancestors were a wonderful chain of life and love that extends all the way to us today. So, regardless of what has happened to you in the past, the things that have affected your thinking and the way that you feel about the world, what's more important than anything else is the loving that you do today. So take that gift of love that's resident inside of you, that gift of love that was resident inside Jesus, and live it to its fullest extent. And when you do, you'll be planting seeds of a legacy so that one day people will stand up and say of you, that was a loving, kind human being who touched many, many lives. I'm Brian Martin. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm looking forward to talking with you again. Take care. Bye-bye. I love you.